Hi everyone, welcome again to another episode on Beyond Biz. And today I'm super excited to be hosting Susie, who's kindly agreed to share her valuable time and insights. She is also an incoming candidate at Harvard Business School, and I'm really excited to have you, Susie.
Thank you so much for having me. This is very special because I've never been to this kind of program before. So very exciting, first time as well.
Awesome, that's great. Could you quickly introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure, no problem. Hi, everyone. My name is Susie Wang. I was a nerdy scientist, so I'm a scientist by training. I did my undergraduate and PhD at Rutgers University and pursued a postdoc training in the University of Pennsylvania. After that, I spent 3 years in a startup, a biotech startup, doing platform building, drug discovery research, as well as project management. And after that, I will be very excited to join HB as a class of 2024 to kind of make transition to more like business related functional area in the biotech industry. So thank you again for having me.
Awesome. Thank you, Susie. One question that I definitely have, and I'm sure a lot of viewers would also have, is why an MBA post PhD? I mean, that's quite an unconventional choice. So how did that idea come about, and take us through that journey?
So first of all, MBA and PhD are completely different. So don't be fooled by the title or the degree. Sounds pretty advanced, but PhD training focuses on the research as well as technical expertise. So my PhD can give me the expertise, allow me to work as a scientist in the biotech industry to do specific research in drug discovery. But after that, I realized I want to combine that with something, for example, business related. So from that perspective, I don't have enough business knowledge or business training. And also all my leadership experience focused or centered on the specific context, which is research context. So it's very different and they are not conflict. I think pursuing MBA after PhD, it's just something like you have enough knowledge in one field and you want to gain knowledge and exposure in the other field. So I decide to pursue. I have to say it is untraditional, but it's not completely out of nowhere. People have done this before. So I think it is a great opportunity for me. And of course, a learning opportunity.
Awesome. That's a great explanation to the question. How was it like for you? You told that you worked in a startup. So how was it, managing the MBA applications, given that you're from, let's say, a non-feeder or a non-Fortune 500 firm?
I think working in the startup, it has very different perspective compared to the Fortune 500. I never worked in the Fortune 500, so I cannot really comment that. But by exposing to a very different environment, for example, a small group, you have to be quick enough to learn everything and you actually get the opportunity to do everything. So I think this is the trigger of my MBA motivation, because I do get the opportunity to see how to build a team, to grow the company, as well as how to beg money from investors, of course. So this is just a fresh perspective and it stretched me so much and I learned a lot from that experience. So I very appreciate the startup experience and I think it's very rewarding. So that's why after MBA, I actually decided to go back something similar to that. And I want to explore more because I think skill set wise and business knowledge wise, the startup give you more opportunity to be hands-on. But again, this is just a personal feeling. And I believe in the 500, there's another route to train yourself or grow yourself in a different way. I just want to make a comment that coming from a non-Fortune 500 is not the end of the world. It is not something that you just inferior compared to others. So we just need to be confident and find what is the transferable skills and what is your learning experience from that working experience.
Great. I think that would be a lot of motivation for folks who do not have, let's say, a top 500 firm, let's say, on their resume. How was it actually? I have a question. How was it like working for you at the startup? Was your role more research oriented, or did it also involve some business aspects? How was that working in the startup?
Biotech startup is a little bit different. So scientists basically are scientists. We do research. So that's where you hired for. You just get an opportunity to more closer to the business side. For example, when you do the platform, of course, you have to do due diligence, and you get the opportunity to look at other firms, which may not be the confidential information, more like public side. But again, you learn how to look at the information and find the differentiator and come up with something creative and more competitive compared to others. That is more towards the strategy side. And of course, fundraising, begging money, you know how to make your research sound compelling and what kind of data that investors really care about. Of course, you learn the feedback from those investors and build the data room. So that is also kind of a combination of the research and the science and the business, because the core is still the data, right? Yeah, so short answer to your question is, it is a combination, but compared to the traditional research scientist, it is a closer to the business side.
Great. Let's talk a little bit now about your MBA applications. One thing that I wanted to ask you was, given that you had this research role and also some aspects of business, but typically people tend to talk about some stories of collaboration and leadership in their essay. So how did you go about your answering the what more would you like to know, the HBS essay?
So when I brainstormed my HBS essay, I heard a lot of voices from different sources, and people say you have to find a theme about your life story to make it complete. So you can write down really compelling story for your HBS essay, why you want to pursue and what kind of person you are. For me, that is not the case. So when I was younger, I never thought about I will be a scientist. And I think that applies to a lot of people. You may make decision when you're younger that you're not aware you want to do in the future. So I actually picked something that can just form a more like a complete story instead of a really forced to find a theme to make all the story together. So instead of forcing myself to do that, I just pick up whatever I think is relevant to what I think is the decision-making point of my life, and also try to think what events and what story make who you are right now. So that was my strategy, and I write down a whole bunch of stories. I try to read and find, oh, this is, I think, more important. This is the quality I have, and I got it from here.
Awesome. I think that would be also great advice for folks who may tend to, put the essay into some sort of like a box, that this is the only way to answer the HBS prompt. So that's a very great insight, I guess.
Yes. And before we move on, there's a little thing I also want to comment was the theme. So also, if you read some other sources, or maybe, blog on the internet, people will say you have to state what theme it is. You have to state what person you are. For me, it's also not the case. So I don't really have to say what person I am, what quality I have, what's the theme of my life. It doesn't matter. I think the audience will have an interpretation. It's relatively accurate interpretation based on your writing and your story. So that is another, I think, hindsight or look back that I read my essay right now, that's what I got.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's also good to think differently and write your story the way you want to write it, right? You don't have to always also pick, the kind of theme or a particular theme or something that you had along those lines. I want to talk a little bit about, work experience, right? So given that you have done you have some work experience and you also have a Ph.D. I'm assuming you have, let's say, higher than average work experience. So did this thought cross your mind that should I apply to a regular MBA or should I go for the executive one?
So I did think about that, and people ask me a lot, why not pursue an executive MBA? But I look at my experience. First of all, I want to make a career transition, which may not be the case for the executive MBA. And second, if you look at my working experience, it's not that much, compared, it is on the average. So I'm still falling to the regular range. And also, I think I try to imagine myself sitting in the executive MBA classroom. I interact with the company executives. I don't think I'm there yet. So plus the career transition and the career resource from the full-time regular MBA, that is the most important for me. So 2 years, I know full time, it is a lot of trade-off and a lot of financial burden, but it is the right choice.
Okay. A little bit also about myself, but when I was applying, I had a lot of self-doubts, like, given that I was not from a top tier undergrad, or, I also didn't work for a Fortune 500 firm. So I always had a doubt whether I would, let's say, fit in to the HBS category of schools. But did you also have something similar, given that your background was, let's say, I would say, not very traditional, right? You had a Ph.D. So did this thought cross your mind that, maybe I'm not a very conventional candidate? How do you think about that, and how do you navigate that?
I think coming from a non-traditional background is a blessing and curse. So let's focus on the blessed part. Yeah. Really, you bring a very fresh perspective. Imagine you have a classmates that 90% are coming from a traditional business background, and your working experience, I won't focus on the technical expertise, but the way you think about the problems and you think about how to read the case, that's completely different, which is very valuable for others to learn from you. And for myself, of course, I want to learn from the traditional business classmates. I want to get exposed to how the real business works. So it is I think that is the positive side, right? And the curse side, the dark side is so some of the strength, for example, my technical expertise may not be appreciated as equivalently in the biotech startup world. Right. So, I'm a scientist. How much of your knowledge will be translated to the business world? Maybe a little, maybe some context, but not as important as you're working as a scientist. So from that perspective, I have to find the so-called transferable skill, which sounds a little bit cliche, but that's what happened. You have to extract some of your learning, some of your really good quality and strength from your working experience, and apply that to either your MBA application or I think in the future. So for me, I clearly know that in the future, even I want to make transition, I'm still gonna use my technical expertise. So I think that is still important to me. Really, at that, during the application, you'll hear a lot of voice, a lot of doubts, a lot of some encouragement, but most of them will say, I'm not sure, that kind of uncertainty. Yeah. At that point, number one is, of course, you're applying, so just applying. Number two is when you're on the way, right, you just accept all the risks that come with that.
Yeah.
So, it is a pretty tough journey, but I did learn a lot. And okay, I can share an example with you. So sure. After my MBA application, and I went to a job interview, which is probably different from most of the business related job. So as a scientist job, you have to give a presentation, which more like a technical presentation. And then you do interview with the groups. And from, what I learned from my MBA applications, I really know how to tell the story to make it compelling. And I think it is still transferable skill, from MBA application to the actual job interview. So I think I learned a lot.
That's a great hint, right, of what's lying in the next 2 years. I mean, if you can learn so much just from the application process, maybe the 2 years are also transformational in terms of the learning transfer. So thanks for sharing. Yes. Many thanks. Also, a lot of candidates have this question around working with an admissions consultant. So what was your experience like? Did you work with a consultant, and would you recommend people to work with a consultant?
I did. I'm extremely authentic and honest to everybody. I did work with a consultant, and that experience was actually really good. Again, I'm coming from a non-traditional background. Right. The way that I interpreted it is I don't know the evaluation system in the business school. So what I think it is good, what I think it is valuable may not be the case in the MBA application. So from there, I think I need somebody with experience and help me or guide me to translate those experience in the way that business school will be appreciated. So I work with a consultant. It was very expensive, I have to say. And so I try to think, I learned a lot how to interact with people, how to give advice the essay I wrote, a first draft probably is completely out of, you don't want to read it. And in that case, the way my consultant gave me advice or suggestion to help me improve, that was a really, high level technique. You don't want to tell people so straightforward, but you still want to give the advice. So I try to look at that. And also my consultant helped me she kept inspiring me. She kept asking me questions, pushed me to do more research. I have to say, she did not write anything for me. Let's be clear. So working with consultant may not save your time. Probably you will spend more time because this person gonna push your limit and also ask you to do this research or that research. So I think it is very helpful in my application process. And she helped me to validate my thought because I can tell the thought to somebody that not coming from my background. So I want to make sure somebody without those training understand what I'm talking about. So I think it is very important. And for people who want to work with consultant, I have just weird confidence in myself in terms of people. So I feel the click at the very, very beginning.
Right.
And then decide to work with this person. And I know, you want to work with a consultant, you have to be 100% confident in this person and trust this person.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, it is not always the case, and working with consultant, it is not the absolute need for MBA application. It depends on everybody's case. So, it just personally, for me, working with admission consultants was really helpful.
Great. Thanks for sharing the details of the story. I'm sure this will help people who are still deciding, whether they should choose a consultant or not. In terms of your application process, are there any certain tips you have for candidates just for starting out in this journey? Because I think round 1 deadlines are almost less than 2 months away. So any tips for the current students, current applicants?
I think I have 2. Okay. So number 1 is think about the application as making an argument. Just you're trying to persuade the admission officer or persuade the school to accept you. So the career goal, the story, or the contribution essay that you wrote, it should be very compelling as an argument. And the logic should follow the argument as well. You have your premise. Here you have your conclusion. All the premise is try to strengthen your conclusion. So you'd better have a really strong reason why you want to go to school, why you want to pursue MBA. So your career goal, apply the same rule. It is an argument, right? The conclusion is, I need MBA, but all those information you provided should strengthen this conclusion. So that was my number 1 tips. Number 2 tips is, personal does not mean non-professional. So what does that mean? So I heard a lot of stories or a lot of advice when I would apply MBA, people would say personal story. Then you think, oh, what I have out of work, or personal, make it personal. So you sound like, yeah, I should write something more about my life, what should I write, right? But actually, after all of this, personal, I think you can put is equivalent to specific. So you want to make the essay and the story only for you. So when you change a name, may not be applied because the other person does not have that experience.
Right.
And if you change the name of the school, it does not apply because the other school do not have those resources that you want or to support your career goal. So I was confused at the first place when I hear people say, oh, make it personal. But really, if you change it and make it specific, okay, that makes more sense.
Awesome. Very specific tips there. So many thanks for sharing. In terms of your application right now, of course, this admissions is a big black box. We don't know what clicks for everyone, but what do you think helped you get that admit? So what was something unique that was there in your application that you think, okay, maybe the admissions committee liked that about me?
I think it's really hard to figure out what admission officer like about you or don't like about you. Personally, I think I have very special personal experience, especially during COVID. I became a mom during that time, so it was a tough experience, plus a lot of change in my career. So I think that made me a little bit unique compared to others. And also, I believe that is a tipping point in my life as well, more like a defining moment to make who you are. So the special experience give me the quality that I have right now, but also make me think a lot. So the more you reflect, the more the story that you have. That is one part. Of course, I don't want to say I'm coming from a non-traditional background. That's why school likes me. May not be the case, trust me.
Yeah.
So I still think the unique personal experience, and I believe for HBS specifically, the admission officer want to bring a different perspective in the class discussion. So the personal experience and my working experience, and of course the non-traditional background will bring a fresh perspective in the case discussion.
Absolutely. And if you had to, let's say, do this process all over again, right? Let's say you're applying for round 1 this year. What things would you do differently this time?
I thought I did a pretty good job, but there's one thing I definitely going to change is you will hear a lot that people say, oh, you need to show your love to one school and you need to sign up a lot of events of the school. So I actually did, and I spent a lot of time sitting in those admission webinar, just listening, and you will realize a lot of information are repetitive. And also I sign up a lot of student coffee chat. You just keep asking the generic question, how's you feel the school, why you pursue MBA. So for that, I have to say, be strategic. If you think you want to get experience, for example, the vibe of the school, the culture of the school, or the student life, maybe just talk to 1 or 2 or up to 5. I think 5, that's a good sample size to get a sense of the school. But for me, I spent too much time, which by the end, when I look back, those information may not be the most important or most helpful one. I'd rather save that time to spread a little bit across the application, because at each stage you may have a different question and more targeted. For example, when you say contribution, you want to get somebody from that club that you want to get involved, then you network. Or you're interested in one of the class or project, and then you want to ask students or you want to discuss with a student who had that experience. I rather save the time during, spread that save for later stage instead of keep asking those generic questions and you got probably interesting answer. But if you think from the application perspective, those are not the most important information you need.
Very valuable, and I totally second that in terms of, sometimes as applicants, we tend to keep talking to attend different webinars, sign up for every opportunity that is there to show the school how much we love them, but maybe all that time is not, fruitfully spent. So I think that's a very valuable tip there. Awesome. I think this has been great. Let's talk a little bit about now, I would like to call it the fun section. And I would like to now ask you, given like this world of scientists, how did they perceive you going to the MBA? Was it positively looked upon, or was there like, why does she need an MBA?
Mixture. I did hear both. So I have to say there's a huge gap in terms of either communication and understanding their day-to-day job between the two groups. Scientists will think the business side a lot of talking, a lot of superficial talking actually, but the business side will look at the scientists as, they just do experiment. What else do they do? So there's a huge miscommunication and misunderstanding between those. I did hear both. Some people will say, that's great, that I think you would do well in the school. And some people will say, why would you even bother applying? That's so much time and so much money. Why do that? I think I have, as long as I have an answer in my mind, I don't really mind what people say, and that just gives me additional caution or additional motivation to keep focusing on what I want to do after MBA, and also just remind me how much time I already spent in my MBA application. I'd better make the time valuable. I'd better enjoy the 2 years and make it a really, really
Yeah.
memorable for me. Otherwise, why do that?
Yeah, I think, yeah, very valuable and very insightful again. I mean, I also faced something similar. We get a lot of different comments and different views on this. But yes, I think if we are clear with our reason, and this is the reason I'm going to business school, and I think then all's good, I guess. Awesome. And just run us quickly through the day of the HPS interview, right? Like, let's say people have got now, the invites have started to roll out and then they've scheduled for HPS interview. So how did you calm your nerves, especially during that day when it was like 15 minutes to join your call?
I have to say HPS interview was intense. I mean, the way the make people think it is intense, and I feel like that's even more intense than the defense. So it is a hard interview. The reason it's hard is you never expect what they're gonna ask. It could be something completely out of nowhere. For example, I actually got a question. They asked me, what's the relationship between my research and mRNA vaccine? So it's really out of nowhere, and you better explain in the plain language and make people understand. So it is, if anyone is interested in HBS and hopefully to get into HBS, maybe, have that mind that train your communication concise and short and on the point, and also get used to that kind of quick reaction. You don't want to rehearse or mock interview too much, because then you kind of get into the trap that people will ask similar questions, which is not. It really could be out of nowhere. And also be familiar with my own material, right? I'd better understand what is mRNA. I'd better understand what I'm research is. So, be familiar with your own material and practice that quick first reaction. It could be very natural. There's just no way to pretend. Imagine that 30 minutes, I got over 20 questions. So it is just all about your first reaction, all about the very authentic and natural reaction.
Absolutely. I love how fair the HPS interview is, given that I can also say exactly similar things. My interview was quite intense as well, and about 20 questions are related to my work experience and other aspects. So I really love the fact that how the interviewer takes the time to go through your application, ask such detailed questions, and hence it's very important that you're prepared, not over prepared, but prepared for the HPS interview. Awesome. This has been really great, Susie. I'm pretty sure that there are going to be folks who want to reach out to you in terms of some advice. So maybe what do you think is the best way for them to connect with you?
I think LinkedIn will be really nice. And please feel free to drop a message if anyone needs help. And I'm very easy to spot because I still use my scientist profile picture. You will see me wear the the white coat. So it's very easy to find me.
Awesome. That's great, Susie. So I'll pin up your LinkedIn in the description in the video below. And thank you so much again, Susie, for doing this. I hope this helps everyone who's watching, and all the best to the applicants, I guess.